Now they are concerned with three major areas: accidental injuries, final expenses, and paycheck protection. The first area they are concerned with is when you are injured in any type of accident. Have you, either one of you, thought about what you would do if you were injured in any type of accident? Well, American Income and the Labor Advisory Board has given it a lot of thought. Their concern is not that your medical bills won't be taken care of. That's what health insurance is for. If it's job related, then workers' compensation is there, and most members have some form of disability. What they are concerned about is lost wages and other expenses that start stacking up. Now, Mary, if you end up in the hospital, you're not going to be working, and no one pays for you to be there. And John, when you end up getting that call to go see Mary in the hospital, obviously you aren't going to be working either. You're going to be right there by her side and vice versa. And God forbid something happened to the children and if neither one of you are working, right? So John, when you and Mary and the kids end up getting hurt and have to go to the ER, they're going to pay for you up to $150 just, going and getting the injury looked at. That's for any type of scrape or bruise, and if you need to get stitches on or off the job, and that money comes here to you at home. Now, the only exception to that is if you have to stay overnight in the hospital. They're going to send you up to $300 a day for up to a full year. The reason why it's $2,100 a week, just kidding. That ends up being $2,100 a week. So, Mary, when that money comes in, will that help you and your family out? Of course it will. Now, the only exception to that is if you end up having to stay in intensive care, they're going to send you up to $600 a day for up to two full weeks. And the reason why that's $4,200 a week is because when you're in intensive care, it's generally a life or death type of situation. Does that make sense? Now, the second area that they are concerned with is your final expenses. Now, John, let's say now, John, who's going to be responsible for you when you get killed in a car wreck? Now, let me ask you, have either of you ever had to plan a funeral? The reason why I asked is that this is a very serious problem. The concern is not that we're going to die, because we all are going to die, right? It's when we die, someone in your family has to face a funeral director, and this has to be done immediately. And the funeral director is going to want all of the money up front on the spot. And, who has to pay for this in the meantime when the life insurance is coming in? Well, that's right, the family. Or you, Mary. So, and what ends up happening is they have to take it out of savings, if it's even there. And worse yet, they have to borrow it. So, does that make sense? So now what they've done is set up the Freedom of Choice certificate to take care of your funeral and final expenses. The Freedom of Choice certificate, if you qualify for it, then you each will get your own certificate, and it looks just like this. Now, the Freedom of Choice is good at any funeral home. The way that it works is Mary, let's say something happens to John and you have to go to the funeral home, take the certificate, and when the funeral home director looks at you and says, "I'm really sorry for your loss. John's funeral is going to be $15,000. How do you plan to pay for that today?" At this point, you would show him the Freedom of Choice certificate, and everything would be taken care of from this point on. So John, in your case, they've set aside $15,000. Mary, in your case, they've set aside $15,000 to pay for your funeral and final expenses. What's not paid for at the funeral home gets sent to the beneficiary. And, you know, John and Mary, isn't it nice to finally have this taken care of today? Now, each of the kids are covered for a $10,000 benefit, and that can be converted to a $50,000 benefit at age 21. And this is regardless of their health and habits, and they can keep this for the rest of their lives. Pretty nice, huh? Now, the only exception to this is if you die before the age of 65. If you die before the age of 65, it's typically going to be in an accident, right? Okay. John, when something happens to you, not only are they going to pay for your final expenses, they're going to send an additional $70,000 to your family to help out during this time. And when we die in an accident, it typically is due to a car accident, right? So in this case, they're going to send an additional $90,000 to your family to help out during this time. And that'll also take care of the funeral and final expenses. Now, if you're using a carrier like a bus, plane, or train, they're going to send an additional $150,000. So each of your children are also covered for $6,000, $12,000, and $30,000 for your funeral and final expenses. Does that make sense? The third problem is your paycheck. John, you're on your way home from work and you get killed in a car accident. You know, or you pass away from a stroke or a heart attack. Who's going to keep, you know, taking care of your expenses? Is your paycheck going to keep coming in? Of course it won't. So your paycheck vanishes just like that. But taking care of the family, putting food on the table, paying the bills, those just keep coming in, right? So Mary, the bills keep coming in month after month, and John's paycheck is gone, right? But let me ask you, you do have life insurance, right? Hopefully 700,000 to 900,000. Typically, it should be 10 times your annual income. The union realizes that all members do have life insurance, but here's what happens in a typical situation. When you die, your family immediately has to start dipping into the lump sums. Eventually, that runs out, and so does the money from the paycheck is gone as well. You know, first it's for reimbursement of your funeral expenses and miscellaneous expenses. But then you also have to keep digging into your savings to pay bills and also put food on the table. And then a year or two later, where does that money go? It's completely gone. So here's your paycheck protection, and or they also call it readjustment income. John, when something happens to you, they're going to start sending Mary a paycheck immediately, and every month after that for up to a full year. Now, the reason why they chose a year is because 2 months just isn't enough time. What does that make sense? Now, what they're going to do in your case, John, when you die, they're going to send Mary this amount of money for this amount of time. Mary, when something happens to John and they send you and your family this money, is that going to help your family out? Well, of course it will. Now, Mary, you'll be in a position to, you know, when this does happen, to invest this money. So make sure to put this towards your children's future, your children's education, and your retirement. And Mary, when something happens to you, John will receive this amount of money for this amount of time. Does this make sense? Now, this does build an emergency fund. After excuse me. After 3 years, if things ever get tight financially, there will be money There will be money to help take care of your program during that time so you don't lose it. There are also paid up benefits. So when you retire, you can stop contributing and keep a reduced paid up final expense benefit for the rest of your life. Pretty nice benefit, huh? Now I've showed you what setting aside will do for your family. Let's review it to make sure that it's clear. First, you have your accidental injury benefits that will be there for your family. Then your freedom of choice certificate covers you, John, and the children, and is there until you need it. Your paycheck protection and all of your protections on the side here are there. Make sure no matter what happens moving forward that you do not lose your benefits. Even if you change jobs, you get really sick, or you decide to move. Again, can you see why these are so important for your family? Now, my job, because of what the union did for you, is to get you enrolled in what you qualify for. The best part is they set this up like a payroll deduction, but they do it once a month through your own checking account. That way, when you change jobs or retire, you're under control, not the union and not your employers. Pretty nice, huh? John and Mary, let's face it, we're all going to die. We don't have a choice. We can choose to deal with this now or when something happens to you. Does that make sense? Now, you will have to answer some medical questions to see if you even qualify. But probably the most important question that I need to ask you is, let's say you're in a bad car wreck, there's going to be this amount of money that's going to be left over. Who do you want the money to go to? Now, have you ever thought about what you will do if you're diagnosed with a terminal illness? Well, they've put a lot of thought into it, and they've realized that you're going to have a lot of cash. When you're diagnosed with a terminal illness, they're going to send half of your paycheck protection and final expense to your they're going to send you, and then the other half will come to your family once you are gone. Pretty nice, huh? Now, there's a strike and layoff clause so that you can't lose your program. In fact, in case of a union strike, they're going to take care of your insurance benefits for you for up to a year, and you never have to pay it back. John, if you can't work even for one day, they're going to take care of your benefits, and you don't have to take them back. You don't have to pay them back. So for a week, it would be this, but for a whole month, it's going to be this. And on layoffs, as long as you've worked for at least the past 12 months, they're going to pay for your benefits for up to 3 months, and you do not have to pay this back. Pretty nice, huh? Also, the insurance benefits are guaranteed and non-cancelable, which means no matter what happens, regardless of your age or health, your lifestyle, you'll keep these benefits. No one can take these away from you. Does that make sense? Now, it doesn't make a difference to them which program you try to qualify for. Most families try to qualify for their 2 hours combined, which is $40, which is what I went over with you. Some families try to do more and add more, and so they set aside double their benefits, which would be $80 a week. Or sometimes members choose to do a more basic program, and they know they'll upgrade in the future. So which way do you want to go today? If you're thinking about which options make the most sense, I'll go ahead and ask the medical questions just to see if you qualify. So then it'd be completing and submitting the sale, and there'll be a pop-up box. It'll tell them about their the next steps of it being processed within 4 to 8 weeks. They'll receive their policy. And then I can make the policy for any day for the next 12 days. I can't make it for the 29th through the 31st. And it will process every month on today's date. Then the warm down. John and Mary, this part is very important. Other than affordability, what are the top 3 reasons that you have these insurance benefits? Okay, we're all finished. You can finally say that you have this done off your checklist. Well, congratulations. It's important for you to understand now that you have this, you should never lose it. If you ever need anything, here's a service number. Make sure to tell your family and friends that I'll be contacting them, and I'll also contact you next week just to say hello. Have an awesome day.